The Kingdom of Prussia began not with a sweeping conquest or a legendary battle, but with a clever trick that would change the course of European history. It was a masterstroke of political maneuvering, a game played not on the battlefield, but in the shadows of courts and council chambers. In 1701, Frederick that crowned himself king in Prussia, carefully choosing his words and his moment. He didn't dare call himself King of Prussia, which would have provoked the powerful Holy Roman Emperor and the jealous neighboring princes. By claiming kingship only in Prussia, a territory technically outside the empire's borders, Frederick exploited a legal loophole. This subtle distinction allowed him to elevate his status without risking open conflict with the empire or its allies. This was more than a new title. It was a bold declaration of ambition and a signal to all of Europe that a new power was rising. The Hohenzollerns, the ruling family, were no longer content to be just another German principality. They craved recognition, influence, and a seat at Europe's top table, among the great monarchies of the continent. The new royal status gave them prestige and leverage in diplomatic circles, but it was built on a calculated deception, a carefully crafted illusion that masked their true power. Prussia's foundation was a masterclass in using narrative and perception as tools of power. The story they told the world was as important as the reality on the ground. The world saw an upstart kingdom, perhaps even a pretender, but they underestimated the drive and determination this new status unleashed within Prussia's rulers and people. The crown was just the beginning. Now, the Hohenzollerns faced the challenge of building an army, a bureaucracy, and an economy to match their royal ambitions, turning their fragile claim into lasting power. This founding lie set a precedent for generations to come. In Prussia, controlling the story was as important as controlling the land itself. Future leaders learned that shaping reality through narrative, propaganda, and spectacle could be as powerful as any army or fortress. From the iron-willed soldier king to the cunning Bismarck, this philosophy of perception and power would define Prussian and later German policy for centuries. Prussia's birth was a lesson for the ages, a testament to how ambition, deception, and the art of storytelling can conjure a kingdom from thin air and set the stage for a new era in European history. Frederick William I, known as the Soldier King, was utterly obsessed with the military. His entire reign was defined by a relentless drive to transform Prussia into a formidable force, both feared and respected across Europe. He believed that military strength was the foundation of a powerful state, and he dedicated his life to building an army that would be the envy of every rival monarch. Yet, his most famous creation, the legendary Potsdam Giants, was more spectacle than substance. These towering soldiers, hand-picked for their extraordinary height, became the talk of Europe and a symbol of Prussian might. But the truth was, these giants rarely saw battle. Their real purpose was psychological, to intimidate visiting dignitaries and impress the world, projecting an almost mythical image of invincibility and power. While the courts of Europe gossiped about Frederick William's eccentric obsession, he was quietly revolutionizing his army. He introduced strict conscription, ensuring every able-bodied man could be called to serve, and standardized equipment so that every soldier was equally prepared for war. Behind the scenes, he filled the royal treasury with ruthless efficiency, cutting court expenses and redirecting resources to the military. His financial discipline was as legendary as his parades. The world saw only the spectacle, the parades, the giants, the uniforms, but missed the real transformation. Prussia was quietly becoming a disciplined, well-funded military powerhouse, ready to surprise its rivals. The illusion worked perfectly. European rivals underestimated Prussia, distracted by the king's oddities and the apparent absurdity of his obsession with tall soldiers. But behind this smokescreen, a formidable and highly organized force was taking shape, one that would soon change the balance of power in Europe. When Frederick William died, he left his son not just a full treasury, but a state ready for greatness, efficient, disciplined, and prepared for war. Prussia now boasted the fourth largest army in Europe, a force that would soon make its presence felt on the continent. The Soldier King's greatest trick was hiding real strength behind a curtain of absurdity, using spectacle as a mask for genuine power. He proved that the best deception is one that makes your enemies laugh, until it's too late for them to react. By the time they realized the truth, Prussia was already transformed. Prussia's rise was built on spectacle, discipline, and the art of being underestimated, a combination that would soon shake the very foundations of Europe. The world would soon learn just how dangerous that combination could be, as the legacy of the soldier king set the stage for a new era of European power. Frederick the Great presented himself as a philosopher king, cultured, enlightened, a friend of Voltaire. He surrounded himself with artists, musicians, and thinkers, cultivating an image of refinement and wisdom that dazzled the courts of Europe. To many, he seemed the very model of an enlightened monarch, more interested in ideas than in conquest. Yet this carefully crafted image was a mask, hiding ruthless ambition and a calculating mind. Behind the scenes, Frederick was always planning, always strategizing, always seeking advantage. When he took the throne, Europe saw a gentle intellectual, not a conqueror. Diplomats and rulers underestimated him, believing his interests lay in philosophy and the arts. He shattered expectations by invading Silesia, catching rivals off guard and redrawing the map of Europe. The move was bold, audacious, and utterly unexpected from a so-called philosopher king. Frederick used his pen as skillfully as his sword, writing histories and memoirs that justified his actions and shaped public opinion. He understood that words could be as powerful as armies, and he wielded them with precision. He spun his wars as defensive, his conquests as enlightened, and his ambitions as necessary for the good of Prussia. Through proclamations and pamphlets, he crafted a narrative that made his aggression seem noble. By controlling the narrative, he made aggression look like virtue. The public, and even his enemies, began to see his actions through the lens he provided. Frederick's persona was a tool, lulling enemies, winning allies, and rewriting history in his favor. His reputation became a shield and a weapon, opening doors and disarming suspicion. Wars were fought on the battlefield, but also in the minds of Europe's leaders and people. Frederick knew that perception could tip the balance of power as surely as any army. The philosopher king's greatest weapon was his ability to shape the story, to turn his own ambitions into the destiny of a nation. In Prussia, image and reality were always intertwined, and often the image won. Frederick's legacy reminds us that history is not just what happens, but how it is told. Frederick's invasion of Silesia was deception in action. He publicly supported Austria's new queen, Maria Theresa, while secretly preparing to strike. Using dubious dynastic claims, he justified his aggression with legal fictions. Prussian propaganda painted the invasion as liberation, appealing to Protestant sympathies. In truth, it was about power and resources, not religion. The campaign's success rested on surprise, misdirection, and narrative control. Prussia outmaneuvered Austria militarily and diplomatically, teaching Europe to fear its cunning. The Silesian Wars proved that in Prussia, the pen and the sword worked hand in hand. The first partition of Poland was a masterstroke of cynical diplomacy. Frederick the Great posed as a reluctant peacekeeper, but he was orchestrating a land grab. He manipulated Russia and Austria, convincing them to divide Poland instead of fighting each other. Prussian propaganda painted Poland as a failed state, justifying intervention as a civilizing mission. The reality, it was a calculated act of imperial aggression, dressed up as international stability. Frederick achieved his goals without firing a shot, using narrative to mask conquest. The partition exposed how easily ideals could be twisted to serve power. In Prussia, shaping the story was the surest path to victory. Prussia's defeat by Napoleon in 1806 led to a new myth, the War of Liberation. The story claimed a united German people rose up against French tyranny. In reality, nationalism was carefully manufactured by Prussian elites to rebuild the state and mobilize the army. Patriotic songs, pamphlets, and promises of reform rallied support, but these promises were soon forgotten. The monarchy used nationalism as a tool, not a principle. The myth endured, shaping German identity and justifying future ambitions. Prussia's greatest victory was convincing its people that the state story was their own. Otto von Bismarck mastered the new age of media and public opinion. He secretly funded newspapers, bribed journalists, and planted stories to shape perceptions at home and abroad. The Reptile Fund fueled a covert propaganda network, making the press an arm of Prussian policy. Before every war, Bismarck used the media to cast Prussia as the victim, preparing public opinion for conflict. He understood that in a literate, connected society, controlling the narrative was as vital as controlling the army. Bismarck's manipulation of information was a modern evolution of Prussian deception. He didn't just write history, he made sure it was printed daily. The unification of Germany was won as much in the press as on the battlefield. The Ems dispatch was Bismarck's masterpiece of provocation. When a diplomatic crisis with France seemed resolved, Bismarck edited a royal telegram to sound insulting. The published version enraged both French and German publics, making war inevitable. France declared war, appearing the aggressor. German states rallied to Prussia. Bismarck's careful editing turned a dull report into a spark for conflict. The Franco-Prussian War, engineered by narrative manipulation, completed German unification. The world saw a defensive struggle, but it was a war scripted in advance. The Ems dispatch showed that in modern politics, a few words could change the fate of nations. Bismarck's genius was making his enemies write the story he wanted told. In Prussia, the pen was always mightier than the sword. Prussia's rise is a lesson in the power of narrative and deception. From its founding trick to Bismarck's media machine, Prussia shaped reality through stories as much as through force. Myths of invincibility, enlightened rule, and national destiny masked relentless ambition. This approach normalized ruthless realpolitik and set the stage for a volatile new Germany. The techniques of misinformation pioneered by Prussia echo in today's world of social media and 24-hour news. Studying Prussia is not just about the past, it's a warning for the present. Nations are still built and sometimes destroyed by the stories they tell. History is full of hidden manipulations beneath the surface of great events. The rise of Prussia is just one example. There are always more layers to uncover. Join us as we keep exploring the stories that shaped our world.